And welcome to another edition of Odyssey House Journals. I'm Trip Mitchell, and that is Randall Carlisle.
How are you today?
We are in a new set.
Yeah, we are. Is there any reason?
Yes, so we've got a world-famous designer out in the other part of the studio doing some pictures for a big competition in L.A. And this guy was on Project Runway. And so Vita, my fiance, knew him from the show. She has never been impressed with anything having to do with television or anything like that.
I can understand that.
Until someone from Project Runway was here. And
you ought to see out there, there's all these colored wigs and everything. When I walked in, I thought, are we going to dress up or what are we going to do?
So yes, we're going to. You and I, unfortunately, I've offered you to model for them.
Oh, really?
Yes, and they were very excited to have you.
I'm sure they were.
But they're processing your your information.
My background information, that probably wouldn't come up well. And besides, I'm too old for Project Runway.
Yeah, is sad to say. But we have a guest who's been outside the studio for a while, and I didn't notice the Odyssey House, so I went by and said hi a couple times, and all of a sudden it clicked. And
Chad Nielsen. And you know, this podcast is all about recovery. Addiction and recovery, and he is a prime example of recovery. As a matter of fact, you might have heard about him or seen him in the news several years ago. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, in 2017, I ran a puppy scam in Utah. And it turned around.
Wait.
A puppy scam.
I heard that
What
correctly.
does this have to do with drugs? Well, I'll tell you. He needed money.
So. Yeah, and it was to pay for my drug habit. There was a long process. One day I walked out of I was in a hotel room, walked out of the restroom, and turned on the TV, and there was my face. And it was on every news station. So
we have a famous person, infamous person.
Yeah, infamous.
Yeah.
Tell me what a puppy scam is.
Well, what it was my ex-girlfriend, like at the time and still, but she turned around and she was breeding huskies, and we figured out through a process of elimination and trial and error that we could turn around and have people come put deposits on the dogs. And then, so we had the puppies, but then that we would turn around and have the next people in line come put a deposit on the dog, but overcharge them, pay the first people back, and then keep the profits for our drug habits.
It's ironic that you mention that, because that's how a lot of white-collar crime starts. Bernie Madoff was the same way. And
I was going to say this sort of a animal Ponzi scheme.
That's exactly,
yeah.
And there's so many of them in Utah.
Yeah.
And it's a horrible deal, but what you find is that, and this is going to sound like a crazy analogy, is you typically look at an alcoholic or a drug addict as being in the dregs of society, and in many cases these are high-functioning, smart people who just get behind the eight ball. You didn't start out wanting to scam people.
No, absolutely not. It started out literally just trying to support our own habits to where we went to any means that we could to get the next, either get rid of the withdrawals or get the next high. So yeah, we didn't start out thinking like that. It kind of flowed into it, and at the end of it, she was running it, and I was going and picking up the drugs and coming back. So
yes, honey, I'll go pick up the drugs.
And one of the things with this show that I've been amazed at is then what you want to score drugs in Utah, it is not a difficult thing to do.
It's not, and that is really unfortunate. It's just it's way too easy. You can get it either from, big pharma companies. You can get it from on the streets. You can find it, honestly, it's in high schools and junior highs and stuff like that now too. So, it's not hard. And the sad thing is the stronger drugs are hitting the younger age groups. So it's just killing people off left and right.
So he told me about his puppy scam thing. He said you can find it on the news, and I Googled it, and yeah, there's his picture looking a lot different than he looks right now.
How did you get caught?
I honestly, I don't know. Like, I turned on the news, and then I had a detective investigating me. They put out the newscast. There was 14 different people that came forward, and I honestly don't know how it originally started. I really don't.
So what was the ramifications of getting caught?
Well, I actually ended up paying everybody back, but it was just we didn't get prosecuted for it. We used our real names. We had the dogs themselves, and because we were paying people back, they didn't end up prosecuting us legally. But I was, like I said, paying people back. I've had civil suits and everything else like that I've had to pay for.
So we're talking recovery. How'd you go from that and being, what was it, heroin?
It was heroin and crack cocaine.
Okay, so how'd you go from there to working at Odyssey House?
That's a long story.
I'm sure.
I can summarize it, but it basically got to the point where I was living on the street down in Operation, like before Operation Rio Grande happened. I was down there by the homeless shelter, and we heard about Operation Rio Grande coming around. So, and at the time, me and my ex had split up while we were down there on the block, and I left and went to 4500 South and State in that area and started selling drugs in that area to pay for my habit, working for somebody that sold drugs. So while I was doing that, my father actually knew the detective of Murray City Police Department. So they had me pinned. They knew where I was. He came up and stopped me several times. The warrant officer came and arrested me. I was in and out of jail. And one day I got put in jail, and I just decided that I was done. Like, I don't know what it was specifically. I just didn't want to do it anymore. So on April 19th of 2018...
Not that anyone's keeping track.
Oh, I am. But on April 19th, I turned around and I called my daughters because it was my youngest daughter's birthday. And I talked to her, wished her happy birthday. Then my oldest daughter got on the phone and she said to me, "Dad, I don't care what you have to do. I don't care how long you have to be away from us to get clean. Just don't kill yourself." And that...
How old was she at the time?
She was 11. And that hit me hard. But from that point on, I turned around and decided I didn't want to do it. So when I went to court from jail, I looked at my LDAs like, okay, they're trying to enhance charges that you've already pled to, so they can't enhance them to felonies or anything like that, so we can get you out of here. I looked at her and told her to put me in rehab. Like, I was done. I just didn't want to do it anymore. So she turned around and went back to some cases to where I was on 45th and State, found out that there were felony charges that I could get for distribution, and I got hit with those felony charges, and I accepted it. I didn't know how severe they would be, and they were both first-degree felonies, so I was looking at 2-5 to lives, and they told me 20 years minimum if I messed anything up.
Whoa.
Which wasn't... I mean, that wasn't the reason I got clean, obviously, but, I mean, great incentive.
That's a good incentive.
But I turned around, and then I just stuck with recovery. Once I started it, I didn't go back to it. Earlier, before all that, I tried to do it on my own, which was a big thing for me, because when I tried to do it on my own, I relapsed 4 times.
You got into it on your own. You figured I'll get out of it on my own.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I relapsed 4 times. I overdosed 4 times, and on the last time I overdosed, I stood up, and I was more disappointed that I had been robbed while I was overdosed, other than the fact that I had almost died. So,
Typical addiction thinking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, so I turned around and...
by the way, just to let you know how the street is, you're dying of an overdose, and rather than someone maybe giving you a shot of Narcan or something that could
Well,
save
one
your...
guy ran to go get Narcan, and then everybody else around me robbed me. When he came back and gave me the Narcan, everybody else ran away.
And these were all your buddies, right?
Some of them, supposedly.
Yeah.
And acquaintances, not buddies.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That the street is a very honorable spot.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a metaphor for how, addiction is.
It is.
It's so disgusting. I saw when I was working in TV news, I saw somebody down on the block having a seizure, and the people he was sitting with are going through his pockets while he's like on the ground having a significant seizure. It's disgusting.
I saw people attacked down there. Not to get too graphic, but have their throats cut. I've seen people stabbed. I saw people shot. It's a violent, violent place.
So where'd you go to treatment then? Or did you get in drug court, or what happened?
I did. My LDA got me into drug court, and then I accepted the plea and everything else, and they said it's a plea in abeyance. So I said, all right. Then they came and did an eval on me in jail, and then they told me, you're in drug court. After I accepted the plea, and I went to VOA Cornerstone, which is outpatient. I didn't go to an inpatient facility, but I had already made my mind up. I wanted the better life. I knew what was out there. I had a huge support system. My family's very supportive, and now it's grown and grown and grown, and it just keeps growing. Like daily, my support system grows, and the people I know in recovery. So I turned around, and after I got done with, what was it? After I got done with Cornerstone, I turned around and I got a hold of somebody named Brian, and he is one of the instructors to become a peer support specialist. And I talked to several people about it before, and it's basically using your story to turn around and help other people, to turn around and support them through recovery. So I talked to him, and he got me signed up and stuff like that. And then I also talked to somebody at Odyssey House, Tracy. I was friends with her on Facebook for a while, and I honestly didn't know a lot about the career. And I got laid off from my job, which was construction at the time. Turned around and I told her about it, and she's like, "No, you're coming to work for me." I'm like, "Okay, cool." And she works at Odyssey. So I went and got my certification, and then turned around and started working at Odyssey House like that following Monday. So I've been in working for Odyssey as a peer support specialist since May 6th of this year.
Fantastic.
And what people don't realize is how significant that is. I mean, you could walk in with a PhD and talk to a recovering addict and say, now, son, here's the way you should be doing things. But if he walks in and can relate because he's been there, it means so much more to the recovering addict than you with your doctor credentials.
Absolutely.
Well, but what is, as I'm getting to learn more and more about Odyssey House, is it is you've taken a lot of people who've had hard luck situation like yourself, and then Odyssey, to use a coaching metaphor, coaches them up. And a lot of men and women go to the University of Utah, get advanced degrees. So it's a combination of street smarts and great clinical work and social work. So it's not just people who've been on the street. It's kind of an amalgamation.
Yeah, it's a combination. We call it a therapeutic community.
Absolutely.
And what that means is you've got people who have been on the street, like Chad, but you also have, licensed social workers and a medical director. And so it's a combination of all those people working on recovery with the people who are our clients.
And that's a big thing with Odyssey too that was really impressive to me, is it's not just people with SUDs or substance use disorders. It's mental health, it's alcoholism, it's all of that, and it's a behavioral modification program. They don't just focus on addicts, they focus on rehabilitation, like in a core definition.
Yeah,
which is huge.
And after spending some time down in Odyssey House, I'm so impressed with it. But Odyssey House is not an easy road to hoe.
No, it is not.
And for a lot of people, and having been in AA for as many years as I have, one thing I've noticed about AA meetings, they're like, everyone smokes a cigarette.
Right.
And in Odyssey House, no cigarettes. That has to be.
No cigarettes.
I mean, from what I hear, in all facilities now it is like that. So, like you've got First Step, USERA, YPR, all of that. They are not allowing cigarettes anymore either.
And that,
the difference with AA, which you and I attend, is you got to work on 12 steps. Well, Odyssey's a lot more complicated than just 12 steps,
But it's a program that works, and the reason that Randall and I and Lee do this show is a
Lee's
way.
behind the camera,
Yes.
by the way. Say hi, Lee.
Hey.
Yeah,
Lee's the smart one.
Yeah.
But this is a way for us to give back, and the important part when you're involved in the addiction community, and there's an expression called you have to give it away to keep it. And you find a lot of us who do this, and this television show, and thanks to Randall and Lee and podcast, primarily podcast, is a way for us to let people know that there are people out there to help. So if you're watching the show or listening to the show, there are so many people in the state of Utah whose whole goal is to help people get better. And it's a marvelous community. And thank Randall, I've learned so much since we've been doing this show about hundreds and hundreds of people who make their whole lives is helping.
Well, I'm impressed with, and I'm learning every day too, the recovery community in Utah is huge. And you have so many groups like he was mentioning, USARA, YPR, Young People in Recovery. What are some of the Addict to Athlete?
First Step. There's Valley Epic. There's Haven. There's House of Hope. It goes on and on.
But the good news
It's
is,
awesome.
if you or a loved one have a challenge, have a problem, there are so many people out there. If you have good insurance, there are programs that, frankly, will charge you a lot of money. And there are programs that won't charge you a dime.
Right.
And the amount of money you spend is not in any way reflective of how successful a program you're going to be.
No, it's
No.
generally reflective of whether you get your own room and whether you have a private chef or a masseuse or something, but it's
Yeah.
not reflective of the treatment you're getting to help you with your issues.
And ultimately, that's the
Yeah,
it's the most
sure.
important thing. But your point was great. When you finally hit that moment, you had had enough. Whether it was your 11-year-old daughter saying whatever, when you reach that point, then all things are possible.
It is. You have to want recovery. There are people that leave, from Odyssey House and stuff like that are just not ready, and that's just part of life. I mean, we don't force anybody to do recovery because we know it's not, that's not realistic. So when people want to turn around and they want recovery, yeah, they're going to stay through it. They're going to fight through it. They're going to go through the emotions and the therapy and everything else. But if they don't want it, they're going to hit a breaking point and then just leave, whether it's court ordered or not. I mean, it is their decision. It is their choice.
Yeah, there is freedom out there.
When I speak to groups, I say Odyssey or even all treatment programs are not for everyone because, like he said, you have to be ready. You have to want it. You have to hit the point that he hit. It's not necessarily rock bottom as we describe in AA meetings, but there's something that seems.
You saw my mug shots. That's rock bottom, buddy.
Yeah, well, I saw it too. That was rock bottom.
Yeah, in the world of TV acting, not too many people use their mugshot as their headshot.
No, not at all. But there are people who are ready and willing to do the work and get through it, and people who aren't, and they leave. And they'll find any excuse in the world. I mean, the food sucks.
I need to work out more.
Yeah. I mean,
everything.
and it's an excuse because they don't want to do the hard work and they don't want to stay in recovery. And I mean, I can't tell you how many excuses I use to take another drink. Well, I stayed sober for a week, so I deserve to pat myself on the back with a drink.
And it's ironic, before you got here, Randall, Chad and I were talking about some friends of mine one of them who is going to quit drinking for the month of July, and Chad goes, and Lee, we were laughing and saying, July's tough, but,
Well.
a couple drinks were snuck on a show the other day.
Okay.
And I ratted her out. That was my mistake. I didn't realize that it was sneaky. But when you make that decision, that is truly one of the best days you're ever going to have as a human being.
It is, and one model that I've lived by, ever since I got into recovery, and I kind of adapted it. You see a lot on social media to where it says, my story isn't over yet. And I don't really like it because it kind of sets a timeline on it, but I turn around and think to myself, okay, well, my story's only just begun. I finished drug court on the 29th of this month, and I've already done so much, gotten into the recovery community, turned around and working for Odyssey House, and coming and doing the podcast with you guys and everything else, but I've only started. My standard is to turn around and affect as many people in a positive way as I can.
So let's get the great news. How are your daughters doing?
They're doing great. They live with me again, so we're living out in Tooele in a big house. My sister and my brother-in-law are the biggest support I've had. They supported me while I was in the thralls of my addiction to now, to me being sober, so they've always been there. They're amazing. They're doing great. We actually got them signed up in a charter school to start in August, I think, so yeah, they're doing amazing. They love it.
How's your relationship with them? I mean, is it a good...
It kind of goes back and forth. My youngest daughter, she loves it. She loves to be back with her dad. She listens for the most part and everything else. She does what she needs to do, and she has a blast. My oldest daughter, she does have some resentment towards me, and I don't hold that against her.
Right.
I own that. I did that. So, I mean, but we're working on it. She has definitely opened up to me a lot more since when she first started living with me again. So it's a process.
The tough question, how are you going to deal with either of your daughters if you suspect that they are getting involved in drugs?
That is tough because I actually watched a video on that this morning. It is going to be very difficult.
Don't do what Daddy did. I mean, that doesn't cut crap with
work.
people.
Yeah. At that point, I got to let them live it. I mean, if anything turns around and is illegal that's in my presence, I'm going to try and get them help, and I'm going to try and get them help regardless. But I mean, it's like we were just saying a minute ago, they're not, if they ever do get into it, they're not going to change unless they want to, and it's hard to realize that, but especially when it comes to somebody like your own kids, that is tough, but because I've seen fathers who have lost their kids to that, and that's where it hits home. So,
and in Utah, we have such a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible problem, and we talk about it each and every episode of the show, that we have a perception that half our population doesn't have any addiction issues at all. The religious LDS population, they don't drink, therefore drugs aren't a problem. And nothing could be further from the truth. And
drinking is one of the hardest ones to get away from because it's everywhere and it's legal.
Amen to that.
But on the other hand, you can go through a life where you've never had a cocktail in your life, nor would you ever think about one, but you hurt your back and get some painkillers, and all of a sudden you're off to the races. So it cuts across socioeconomic lines. Addiction is something that is part and parcel of life. But the good news is there are a tremendous amount of people out there. For those of you watching on the internet or on TV, we've got a number at the bottom of the screen, and that's some wonderful people at Odyssey House who'd be glad to talk to you and give you some great advice and give you some resources and really help you out. And we also have a tremendous voiceover artist who will give you the number if you're listening. And
ladies and gentlemen, the number is 801-322-3222.
Boy, with pipes like that, Don Pardo is looking down from heaven.
Come on down.
Perfect. Hey, Chad, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Your story hits home, and the only thing that could have made that scam, I might have been one of your peoples if it was Yellow Lab scam.
No, it was Husky Wolf hybrids. So
okay.
We thank you for sharing it because and you said you wanted to serve people in the future and help more and more people, and by doing something like this, describing from where you were to where you are now, hopefully it will inspire some people to take some positive steps in their life. So
it is possible, and it only gets better. Every day it only gets better.
Thank you so much. What a great show. Really enjoyed meeting you. We'll see you next time right here on Odyssey House Journals.